Hello. I'm going to give you a short insight on the data center efficiencies, or best practices as they're being called here, that we have implemented at UBS. When I got first a call from Google to present on what we're doing, I kind of was somewhat in worry because we started, we actually did a couple of things, but if they really would qualify as best practices is always a question, because you know, a best practice actually implies that you'll do two things. You'll do the right thing and you'll do things right. And that's occasionally not the same thing, as you can see, especially when we looked at what we've implemented. What will I shortly give you today? Now, it should flip over, but it's not. Okay. There it comes. I'm going to give you a short introduction first into what UBS is, for those who don't know. And then actually in section 2, I will do a deeper dive into the environmental management and green IT measures that we have implemented. It is an interesting view because that's something that you occasionally wouldn't expect a bank to do. You know, we normally operate on a different premise. Now, let me see if it works. I don't know, it seems to do it wrong. Okay. Technology. You'll need it and you'll hate it. Okay. First, UBS. Since 150 years in banking, organized as an Aktiengesellschaft with shares traded in Swiss Exchange and New York Stock Exchange. We're covering banking business, wealth management, investment banking, asset management, as well as retail banking operations, which is kind of a unique proposal that we'll give our customers. Now, depending on the region, this means that we work in, we do have different requirements from our customers, being our business actually that then offers the banking services to the customers of ours. And depending on the business, you know, you have rather real-time requirements or you'll have safety requirements, etc., and these have to be covered. We support over 50 countries grouped into 4 regions, and within those 4 regions, that's how we'll operate.
Sorry, we changed the slides for you.
Okay.
So just mention
Now, going over to what actually data center services is within that setup. See.
Yeah, just say when you want.
Okay, good. So data center services, a couple of facts and figures, right? We're a big company, so we're organized in technology streams. Technology streams being the data centers itself, so in other words, facilities, being servers, being storage. So we'll do have a couple of technologies that run. If you'll expect a speech on grid or on virtualization, that's not what you're going to hear from me. I'm going to give a couple of details on that, but I'm not going to be focusing on that one. Our goal is really to provide robust, and I say truly robust data centers, because you know, we're in a banking business. Reputation is everything. We can't allow our data centers to go down. So resiliency is key, robustness is key, and we probably do book there or overdo what we'll do there. Every measure that we'll do has to be measured against the risk it creates at implementation. However, you know, we'll do as well, try to do whatever we'll do robustly, cost efficient and scalable. Trying to reduce risk, minimizing the number, so in other words, makes best utilization of what we have. We do have data centers in 12 countries, hosting around I would say 80% is service and storage. Storage growing with incredible rates due to due to regulatory requirements. And we do have the rest is then mainframe, networking equipment, voice multimedia, whatever you'll have as well, centralized in the data centers. We do have 50 megawatts of data center load at the moment, operating at an average utilization of 63%. That average is slowly but steady increasing, and I'll come to why. If somebody works rather with the consumption than with the load, that's roughly around 139 gigawatt hours per annum, or in carbon dioxide, around 40,000 tons of carbon dioxide. Cost spread, roughly 25% of the cost is in power. Raising. Over the last 3 years, I've seen a raise from 21% in our total cost up to 25%, and that's actually expected to go up, further up. I envisage that, power consumption or the cost for power could reach roughly a third of the data center operational costs. We do work with a legacy environment, and that's actually as well quite a key one to remember when we then go through the measures. Our average age is somewhere in the area of 10 years. However, will range between 2 years and up to 32 years in data centers that we'll have operating. So, a lot of measures that are out there as listed as best practices are best practices that you'll have to build something new on in a new data center or a new room that you'll equip. We not always have the luxury to do that, but we'll have to stay within the legacy environments that we have. Okay, so let's flip over. One more. Environmental management really is being built into the DNA of UBS. We do have a code of business conduct and ethics, giving the foundation, focusing that we'll have to take care of our environment. Environmental programs are actively pursued. Actually, UBS was one of the first banks that certified for ISO 14001 back in 2093. And is since then, every 3 years, redoing the recertification. And one of the things that you'll have to do there is actually permanent improvement. So in other words, you'll have to show that you'll improve from year to year. We'll have as well some very aggressive environmental targets, like reducing CO2 emissions or the reduce the absolute energy consumption against baselines that will, as data centers, quite substantially provide our contribution to. Going over to the next slide, it's really the areas that we'll focus on. So we'll focus on energy efficiency within the IT. We'll focus on electronic waste, e-waste handling, and we'll actually as well have an area that works with the environmental management system, really making sure that we'll as well measure what we're doing. Now let's focus on the energy management piece, which is really the portion or the topic while we're here. And you'll find an overview on that on the next slide. The IT in our company, in our bank, is the biggest consumer of power. Over 50% of the power that UBS uses flows into IT. That's data centers as well as desktops. And desktops in the wider sense, including printers, screens, etc., etc. Right? 3/4, however, of that total consumption are consumed within the data center itself. So that's really focusing on data center efficiency is key to make an impact. We haven't broken the utilization down as you could do in order to focus on where you get your biggest returns. However, we'll kind of have a fresh look on that. I think, and that's the first key point. We started to make a program out of this. So you'll see in this rather colorful chart there that we'll started to put together the measures that we're taking and started mapping them out against each one of the data centers we do have. We currently have 32 data centers in our state. Our goal is to reduce them still, but if you'll implement a measure in one site, you might be able to do that, but you might not be able to implement it in the second site. As I said, you're working with legacy, average 10 years or older data centers, and you can't always just, rupture a working operating data center. That was always the premise here. We don't disturb our operations. Again, bank, reliable, robust. We don't touch or we don't create additional risks, not for ourselves, not for our customers. But having actually a program, actually making it a topic and not just talk about it, but start acting on it is really one of the key steps, as simple as it may sound, to actually do. And then the other one is really start reporting on it. As you can see from the charts on the lower right corner, start reporting on the energy savings that you're doing, because what you'll report is being recognized normally. People are all of a sudden become interested. They see, oh, well, we'll do savings. Well, why have we now done less than last year? You'll have to start answering quite interesting questions, but really actually measuring and showing results helps you getting a program through. We've since created a program and structured in the 5 possible categories, as well, I think, from the easiest one, improving airflow, then optimize operating parameters, implement equipment adjustments where possible, conduct feasibility study and visionary investigations, and then as well, lastly but not least, consolidate the data center portfolio. And we're supporting our customers. Supporting our customers in their own, and when I say customers, that's now the internal customers, like storage, like servers, on helping them with server and storage virtualization programs. We looked at energy settings with the desktop management, hardware lifecycle programs, because normally newer equipment tend to be more efficient, right? Giving allowance for that, making allowance for that. Integrated cloud computing, some initial studies have been done, or CPU clock throttling for dev servers, all measures that you can implement but are outside of our own control. Now let's turn into what is in our control, and that will be starting on the next slide, and it's really going after the low-hanging fruit. First one, we'll start to look on how we could improve the airflow. Simple measures. Sealing your data center. Can be done as part of your daily operations, right? People working into it, it's no cost or low cost. But the effects, and I'll kind of give a short summary on the effects, is actually quite interesting when you'll see that on how it turns out. But really put blanking panels on. You'll see it on the lower row of pictures, how we kind of put the sealing the data center into place with blanking panels, with brushes that actually hold our air, or when we have ducts. That's really a simple measure to do, but it is quite effective. The other one that is quite effective, and don't forget we have a legacy data centers and some of them are very, very old, is work with proper hot aisle, cold aisle setup. In old data centers, you just don't find it. You put stuff in because you didn't look at it. Take the effort, whenever there's a life cycle, start adjusting, start turning servers, start making sure that you'll work with hot aisles and cold aisles. It's a simple measure that you can do during operation, not turning down servers, but life cycle, right? Every server at one point will have to be life cycle, so look at it. There's always the problem of the freestanding equipment. Some of the providers of that equipment have very interesting, or rather shall I say, strange airflow patterns, and we'll kind of try to separate those aisles off in the free cooling area. But even there, we'll try to get there. Next topic, we'll then really start spending a little bit more money. We were starting looking into use of chimneys in order to direct air. One of our newer data centers actually has it implemented, and we'll plan now to start roll it out to other data centers too. Or actually cold aisle containments. With cold aisle containments, we looked at hot aisle containments and cold aisle containments, but in the end, we'll ended up in starting to implement cold aisle containments at UBS. We work together with a rack provider, actually KNUR. I've seen one of the representatives here in the thing. We work together. We even developed as you wouldn't imagine from a bank. We developed a patent that we then actually sold off to that rack provider. But it was really quite some interesting work that we were able to do. And when you look at what we were able to achieve, right? By room, that's a 300 square meters room, 350 servers around running in there. We were able to achieve savings of around 80 to 90% on the operating costs, just for the being able to control and reduce the downflow units, the cracks within the room. That's astounding. So that was really one of the areas that we'll focus on. We'll start now rolling this out slowly but steady. Try to keep a low cost profile. Rolling this out into our data centers whenever we'll have new builds, because that's the easiest one to implement. And we'll do have renovations going on. Every time you'll take a new room, you can do that. Then we started looking at optimizing the operating parameters. ASHRAE standards were mentioned already a couple of times. We do have a problem with that. One is, with our premises folks, the fear that was mentioned before. Well, what will it do to our equipment? We'll work against this fear. On the other hand, we'll actually have technical limitations. We'll have within our cooling loops, we'll have equipment that doesn't support raising temperature to the standards that actually ASHRAE suggests. So we'll look into in the next release. That's why a lot of our measures are actually deferred. We'll look into the next release to actually replace that and get it sorted. Lightning is another one. 10 kilowatts lightning per room that you can save. I'll make a short calculation. 7,000 Swissies per month. 7,000 Swiss francs per room per month. If you have 190 plus rooms worldwide, that turns around into quite some savings that you can achieve. We've done it in Switzerland and measured it. That's roughly around 100,000 Swissies alone in savings, on power savings through lightning, that we're able to achieve within the 50-odd rooms that we have in Switzerland. Going to the next kind of set of measures. By the way, you see here some of the lightning implementation, right? We had it very strongly lighted data center halls, and now we're really down to the basics. And only, we'll have some sensors that actually light up if people have to work in there. Now getting into the more expensive stuff, really controlling the equipment, variable fan speeds, turn off equipment when you don't need it, like it was mentioned before. Why we have all the cracks running at full speed when actually, half of the cracks will be able to help with the load, or to manage the load that we'll have in data centers. Free cooling where possible, so we're looking there into that. Economizers, and two areas we're looking into: heat recuperation, power factor correctors we have installed very successfully into data centers now in Australia, and we're probably going to roll that out to other data centers whenever we'll have to touch the power systems in the data centers, whenever we'll have the next renovations running. Constant monitoring, we're about to set it up. This is, with 32 data centers, that's quite a lot of work that you'll have to do. We do have some monitoring on site, but trying to get that together into a global system is going to cost, $1 or $2. And all that we'll try to do in our running data centers. Again, no compromises to security. Flipping over to, just going up to the next one, we look at next slide, a couple of, strong things. What you'll see there is a canal cooling implementation that we have put into place in a UK data center. A couple of visionary things that we start looking into. We're not going to be early adopters of those technology. And, some of the measures might actually kind of crack a smile on your face when you look about containerized data centers. Some of you might be running for a bank. I tell you, that's a very visionary thinking. So we start looking into those. And then finally, managing our data center portfolio. The best data center or the best savings you'll get out of a data center that you don't operate. In other words, we do have excess capacity out of legacy, small ones that we don't use that much, so we start looking into getting those down. And actually we're going to cut out somewhere around a quarter of our capacity over the next couple of years, making some substantial changes. I'll come to the conclusion and then give you some points to query and answer. I think measurement of the impact is quite key. The point is, it's not always easy to measure. You'll have a live running data center. There's servers going in, servers going out, equipment going in, other equipment going out. And you'll try to measure or baseline a measurement. That's not always easy to do. If it's possible, do it. If not possible, at least calculate the theoretical value and report on it. Again, coming back to the reporting point. What have we done? I think we have, of all the measures that we have put out in that matrix, we have roughly implemented 300 of those measures, which is probably half of what we can easily implement at the moment. And we have seen a 7% reduction on power consumption. 7% doesn't sound like much, especially for such a huge number of measures implemented. But sorry, those 7% equal roughly 2 million Swiss francs. So, you know, it's a worthy saving. We'll do have as well some other 15% savings, assumed savings at the moment in the pipeline. So we really should get something out of this. And when you look at the ROI, there are only a few things that really have a very long payback duration. What we found quite surprising is that most of the measures that you'll implement, as well shown by my former colleague, actually have very, very short payback time within the year. So go for it, right? It is some cheap. Why don't you do them? Getting across from best practice, it actually, you know, from common sense into common practice. Start doing things as well, he mentioned before. Start a program, start measuring, show the measurements, and, you know, as tiny as an implementation it might be, the more you'll do to them, it just adds up. And that kind of leads back to the title of my presentation. It's many, many small steps that lead to success. And I can tell you, success is measurable and is actually quite hard when you look at your back pocket where your wallet is. So, thank you for your time. Questions?
Yeah, we have time for a few questions.
My question is about education. So you have this, you provide the data center space to the to your customers, internal customers.
Yeah.
And their goal is to fulfill whatever IT requirement, business requirement there is. So what's your experience with educating these people to actually install the servers the right way towards the hot aisle, and to get them to understand these issues and to think about it, to implement it?
Well, you know, I think we have taken a very pragmatic approach. Our goal is that everything that's being done within a data center is being done through the data center team. So we don't have the server guys or the storage guys implementing or placing their equipment in our data centers. It's our own places, it's our own people that do it, and they actually are aligned to what they're supposed to do and do it accordingly. So, you know, training is somewhat limited, but there is quite a big training effort that you'll have to do. It starts with sourcing, right? Teach them on get the right equipment. I mentioned before the freestanding equipment that actually blows air out or sucks air in from all directions, not something that you would today put in a data center when you'll try to kind of get the airflow controlled. And that's the thing, you know, these should be disqualified, but once it's in, it's then our people which take care that it's being placed the way it should be.
No more questions? Yeah, one back there.
Slightly related question. Do you have any way of encouraging upstream again on the actual development teams and the application support teams in terms of encouraging higher utilization on the equipment? Again, is there metrics, chargebacks, or something like that that kind of creates that dynamics?
Yeah, we do have, or we have a service catalog in place. And the way we structure the service catalog is that what is fixed cost, kind of the data center, something that they can't control, is going directly to the business user that will have. However, the power costs, we have the complete power costs redirected to the consumers in the technology field. So the server guys get the bill for the server power consumption. The storage guys get a bill for the server, for the storage power consumption. And with that, they all of a sudden get an incentive to start looking as well on something, because that's the way they can reduce their cost, which that they will charge out to their customers. So that really helps as well in getting some control and getting some incentive to do. The other one, which I said, right, we have worked basically energy efficiency into our DNA, in other words, into our daily habits. So we'll have a team that focuses on these kind of initiatives and looks with the virtualization guys. And another one is actually reporting. At the moment, we're preparing a report on utilization in our data center. So in other words, we'll try to, or we'll look into eventually implementing the CADE as one of the reporting. This is going to be a devastating figure when you'll see average utilization, which is somewhere in the area of 10 to 10%, 10 to 20%. It starts turning now with virtualization, where we'll see a lot of pods that we're now implementing, where we'll have quite a lot of applications on. Those utilizations go up, but that's a minority of our estate. At the moment, the big estate is still standard conventional server at a very low utilization. And reporting this, making our management aware, generates quite a lot of pressure.
All right, thank you, Mark.